Hello, welcome to EmComm Solution. My name is Jake, and today we're going to be talking PACE, so primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And we're going to build a sample emergency communications plan with PACE in mind, using unlicensed communications methods. And in this plan, we're going to help. We'll reserve emergency for a caveat there as far as the unlicensed side goes. So yeah, let's get started. So our notes are going to kind of go over, we're going to use, so we're going to develop this comprehensive plan, which for emergency communications is going to ensure that we have redundancy. So PACE's history, its backstory comes from military, and it's used to build comms plans primarily to ensure that no matter what the situation is, obviously military planning for obviously real worst case scenarios, right? To be able to maintain communication, because it is one of the most important things in a battlefield. Is if this entity here and this entity here can't communicate, things can go wrong pretty quick. So in this one, though, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing this using communication methods that don't require you to have like an amateur radio license, business license, or whatever, any of these other FCC license other than the GMRS license, because that one is only that $35 fee over the FCC's website. You pay for it, it's good for you and your family, and it's good for 10 years. So that's a good deal, in my opinion, and worthwhile. So our first primary, I'm going to say, is our cell phone, because we all have them, right? Or most people have them. Paired with our LoRa Mesh communication devices, this one, the T-Echo from LilyGo. These devices, if you're not familiar with them, I'll put some links here in the video that will kind of take you over and show you some of the videos I've done on my other YouTube channel talking about mesh communications using Meshtastic, which Meshtastic, I would say, look at it as like you own a laptop or a computer, and it's made by, Lenovo or, Toshiba or whatever. In the operating system, someone might ask you, are you running Linux or Windows? Well, I'm running Linux or Windows, whatever it may be. Meshtastic is kind of like the operating system of that. Although a lot of people just call these Meshtastic devices, or I'm using Meshtastic, so it's just kind of, instead of calling it like, because they use the IMS bands that we won't get into today, I have an IMS radio instead of that, or I have a VHF radio. Well, okay, what is it? So, okay, I'm off on a tangent. Sorry. Let's get back to the point. The point is, these allow you to employ a local area network, depending on how many you have. The more you have, mesh, they communicate, and you have a texting app that you can use, SMS texting, basically through the Meshtastic app on your phone, communicate with you and your friends and family, or anyone. If you especially use the default channel, anyone that has one of these can use a default channel. You can create your own private channel, so you have some levels of privacy within some encryption, especially if you set them up correctly. So it's a great, useful tool. The range is dependent on, if you're in an urban area, you could look at between 1 to 3 miles without installing some infrastructure. The plus side of this is, yes, you can install your own infrastructure and expand those networks, like finding a ham radio buddy or something that's got an awesome, big tower in an ideal location. Say, hey, what do you think about me installing just a little box up there with a solar panel that won't take up a whole lot of room or anything, that has your own LoRa repeater in it that's maintained by solar power. So, hey, that would be pretty great. Most ham guys wouldn't be opposed to it. In fact, there's a lot of ham people that are into LoRa. So that's something you should consider if you're trying to build that network. But you control that infrastructure. It's not a centralized control. It's not a cell tower. It's not, some sort of government infrastructure that is fragile to power outages and other natural disasters. You control that network. So, and you can build portable nodes that you can pop up in the case of an emergency. that you could just take around town and put them in nice locations to build your network until infrastructure is restored. So enough on that. Let's move on to alternate, right? GMRS, which is really blown up in the recent years, just like I just did a video about Meshtastic blowing up. You can tell by the demand. You go to distributors that sell LoRa devices, and they're sold out. They're backlogged on stock. So that's a sign that people are buying this stuff because they finally realized emergency communication is cool. It's sexy. I know some people are still disagree with me, but hey, it is what it is. So GMRS is kind of the same way. Now they're not really sold out from what I've seen, but you're seeing new, cooler and cooler technology coming out. Like there is some, I did a video on some of the GMRS radio manufacturers that have created a digital side texting feature that seems to be proprietary to those brands. So you have to have all the same brands of radio manufacturers like in your group to be able to utilize those features. But how cool is that, right? So this is they are meeting the demand of us. A lot of times they're not just introducing new things hoping that we're going to buy them. It's because we're asking for it, meaning that, the consumers, right? So that's, I think, is a big win because it shows you that people finally start taking communication seriously, that it is an important part of being prepared. So contingency, we're going to roll on. So GMRS, let me back up real quick. GMRS, handheld radios. I don't have any with me here in Albania because the licensing thing, there is amateur radio here. Wasn't quite sure on that. Plus I only had 3 check bags that I was willing to pay for. Gets ridiculous after 3 prices. So it was still a lot. But anyways, I just couldn't bring everything with me. I had to pick and choose what I brought with me. So maybe in the future, but after I figure out the legality of that here in Albania. So, but we can still talk about it, right? So you have mobile up to 50 watts, Midland. There's repeaters. So you get into GMRS, you get a license, you use your repeaters. You can build your own infrastructure once again, not relying on somebody else, especially if you use technologies like solar, backup generators, those type of things. Now you have a resilient, robust communication network within your local area for you, your friends, family, whoever it is you want to talk to. Always answer that question. Who is it you want to talk to? And then you can start building from there. All right, so contingency, satellite. So recently bought a spot device. It is back in the States with my son because he likes to do a lot of hiking. And as a peace of mind to know where they are or know where he and his friends are out on the trail. And if they get in real world trouble, they can hit that old SOS feature. You can text between an app on their phone. Obviously, the phone still needs to have power. We'll talk redundancies at the end again. But you can text back and forth via, obviously, you have to pay for a monthly subscription service. So they're not cheap. The spot devices, depending on which ones you get, are, more affordable like than the InReach, the Garmin InReach setups. However, I would recommend either or. I'm considering, because of the travel we're going to be doing here in Europe in the coming months and years, we're going to probably get at least 1, if not 2 InReach devices to add to our emergency communications plans, so that as we're traveling around Europe, and I got teenagers, young adults traveling around without their parents, right? I have that peace of mind and know that they have ability to get a hold of us or get a hold of emergency situation services if things go wrong. So, all right. So that's kind of where you're at with satellite. You could go the full route like sat phones. You're talking a lot more money, and subscription services a lot more. So that's one of those ones like, do you want to maintain a service, monthly subscription fee for something that you might not never use? That's for you to, answer that question. Like, say, who is it you want to talk to? And if that person is somewhere outside your local region and you're not going to try to employ ham radio to answer that kind of over horizon communications, maybe it is something you're willing to pay for. Is it in your budget? So those are things you have to consider. All right. So as we talk emergency, we're kind of just, it's not a device. It's it's that last step. What is it with each device? What's your E? Well, what plan do I have in that E? Because you can have a P.A.C.E just for your cell phone, kind of, like, hey, I initially going to try to make a voice call. The voice call doesn't go through. Networks are jammed up with all these things. They'll tell you, hey, try to send a text. This seems to be kind of a myth almost nowadays, because it just seems like the networks get really crammed up no matter what. But a text message is smaller in bandwidth, so therefore it might get through. Well, they also tell you could also try to call outside the local area to, call grandma or call your mom or your dad or whatever that's in a different city that's not affected, to let them know you're okay. And then they can relay back to, your wife, who's, somewhere else. She's at her work location or something somewhere else in the city, to know that you're okay. And then you guys are going to try to, reunite somewhere at a centralized location or some sort of predetermined location, rally point, right? So those are things you can build. And then you could also say, hey, well, the cell networks are down, but my internet, because I got Starlink or whatever, the internet services still be fine. Then I can use one of my Wi-Fi apps that will allow me to send messages or voice calls over that, and I can still get a hold of people. So there's different things, you can use some, apps like Telegram or Signal or stuff like that allow you a level of privacy. So those are all things you could have a P.A.C.E just for this. So I'm going to tell you, on emergency, there's a lot of people out there in this community that buy, your Baofeng radios or other cheapish radios that maybe don't have, a license to operate them. Maybe they use them on GMRS and use at your own risk. They're technically, for the most part, unless they say they're FCC compliant for GMRS frequencies, you're risking that. That's just my words of warning there. And then, however, we all know, at least in the United States, right, in an emergency, you could use those radios to communicate over the amateur radio bands. So you could have them already. So there's your emergency, right? If that's the case. And hopefully, maybe you get them and you think, wow, these are pretty cool. And then you realize how complicated it is to set them up and learn how to use them, because you want to know how to do that before things go wrong. Then you go find someone like, Evan over at Radio Made Easy, and you check out one of his classes, and you buy one of his kits that are pre-prepared for you. You're going to pay a little bit more, but you're paying for a service, right? If you're not willing to do it yourself, find someone like Evan, go to one of his classes, learn how to employ one of these radios in an emergency, have it. Don't just buy it, leave it in the box in your closet or in your workshop or whatever, and think, okay, well, in an emergency, I'll break this thing out and I'll just plug it in and use it. You're going to be disappointed. So follow those protocols and you should be good. So last thing we're going to talk about is, okay, you have all these things to talk in an emergency. What type of redundancies have you put in place? Does your family members, especially when they leave the home for an extended period of time, do they have some sort of emergency backup power to, even if it is just their cell phone, do they have a way to charge it back up? If they're outside their vehicle, and they're stuck in an office building that's partially collapsed because of an earthquake, do they have a way to charge it? Do they have a little battery pack in their purse, their backpack, or whatever? They can charge their phone back up so they can keep to hopefully trying to reach out to emergency services for help. Those are things you need to consider for your infrastructure that you've built for your LoRa network or your GMRS networks or whatever. Do you have backup power for those? Do you have generators? Do you have solar panels? Do you have whatever? So that we're doing this. Yeah, sometimes we use it for everyday stuff like GMRS people. There's a lot of people who use them on ranches and stuff like that, set up like a repeater out on these big cattle ranches so they have coverage of the whole ranch. Well, that's everyday services. Well, what happens when the power goes out? Or you want to put that repeater somewhere that's pretty remote and there's no power there, so you're going to have some sort of backup power system for it. So just consider all those options. If you're interested in what we're doing here, subscribe to the channel. You watch this long, I sure hope you subscribed. Check out our social media links down below. You can check out our website. It's going to be theribbonmakers.com/EmComm. But in the future, we will have our EmComm Solutions website. Just stay tuned for that. Check out our Telegram group if you're into LoRa Mesh Communications. That link will be below. Everything we talked about, links will be below. Affiliate links for LoRa Mesh Communications through Rockland. We are affiliated with Rockland Technologies, so I appreciate you guys watching. Throw your questions, comments down below, and stay tuned for more great videos. Thanks for watching.